Hi, welcome to this video about Tutto Sempre by Jolin Lab. Tutto Sempre is a 4-channel stereo mixer with, well, a plethora of inputs and outputs. There's even a few more stereo inputs, well, without level controls, but you can use these to route signals into the mixer nonetheless. And there's a header on the back, well, there's two, for connecting a Singoli, which, well, if you connect two Singoli and all the inputs on the front here, you can send 28 signals out of your master output. Let's listen to a few short cuts of patch examples that I made. I'll explain these patches in more detail at the end of the video, but for those who have a short attention span, here's a few teasers. Tutto Sempre is a, well, 4-channel stereo performance mixer with volume knobs per channel, silent or clickless mutes. It has, well, a very clever and interesting patch bay with extraction points that don't mute the signal when you connect something to them. There's inputs to reinsert the signal. Connecting something to these does interrupt the signal. The patch bay outputs are pre-fader, well, pre-knob by the way, and pre-mute. There's dedicated VCAs. There's a separate output which is also stereo here. This is post-fader or post-knob and post-mute. So this follows the volume that you set with the knob. All these channels have very interesting and useful normalizations. When you just send something to the left inputs, the signal will be sent out of the left and right master outputs. It will also be sent in stereo through the patch bay outputs and the dedicated separate outputs here. The right input of the VCAs is also normalized to the left input, which means if you send an envelope or anything else really to just the top VCA input, both the left and the right signals will be attenuated by this VCA, which is really cool if you want to create some stereo movement without much hassle. I will show you all of this in a minute. There's an auxiliary stereo input here, which also has these normalizations. Sending something here will just mix the signal into the master input at unity gain, which means it will just be the level that you send it in. There's no separate level control. There's two additional stereo inputs which are tied to dedicated headphone output. There's actually two of these channels, and these channels have a switch that let you choose between hearing just the signal that you patch in through your headphone output or just listening to the whole mix. When you press this switch down, it's just the cue signal that's coming out of the headphone, and it's also not present at the master output. But as soon as you depress this button here, the signal that you run into these inputs will also be mixed in through the master outputs, just like the auxiliary inputs. And, well, as the name suggests, you can use these to cue things up, which means listen to things through headphones without sending it through the whole mix, to make sure that a VCO is in tune, for example. And then with the push of a button, you can route it through to your main outputs and, well, to the PA or whatever. There's a header on the back. Well, there's 3, but there's 2 headers for Singoli. You can connect this module to the back of Tutto Sempre with a small jumper cable. This allows you, when you then flick this switch on Singoli to the right, to route everything that you send in here, and these are just 7 mono inputs, to route everything that you send in here through to the master output as well, which is very useful. You can just use the front panel output of Singoli to patch a signal into Tutto Sempre as well, of course, and then you can disengage the normalization. Singoli also has a transient or peak detector circuit, which gives us a gate whenever a certain threshold is exceeded. I think it's about around 3 volts, but I'll make a separate video about this module. Last but not least, the outputs on Tutto Sempre are balanced outputs, which is very unique to see this in small jack outputs. And there's also a stereo output, which you can use for gear that has a stereo mini jack input, certain cameras, for example, or a field recorder with a stereo input, you name it. But let's now connect a signal to the inputs of Tutto Sempre and well, figure out how all of these features translate when you start using the module. So I don't think this needs much explanation, but I'm just sending the left and right outputs. I'm using unbalanced cables here. I'm sending these through to my interface. And let's just connect a signal here. This is a VCO through a filter. Let's unmute the signal and then let's bring up the level here. And I'm not sure if you're able to see this, but there's nice LEDs here under the input jacks. Let me try to get my hand out of the way. So that gives us a nice indication whether there's something connected to the inputs. Signal is routed through to both the left and the right master outputs, even though I'm just sending in a mono signal. We can extract the signal from this patchbay output. You might wonder why you would do this. Well, I think this is a really easy or basic patch, just a VCO through a filter straight into the mixer, but sometimes you get these really convoluted patches with, well, thousands of cables, and then, well, maybe you have then routed your signal, your VCO, through a filter and a wave folder and maybe a stereo frequency shifter and whatnot before going into the mixer, and then you might have changed your mind. You don't want to use a stereo frequency shifter, you want to use ring modulation. And then sometimes it can get so very confusing to figure out which cables to unplug. So one way to tackle this is not patch your frequency shifter or ring modulator or whatever in line with your signal. So by just sending in my basic sound, I can now try out how this will sound, and I will just use a stereo frequency shifter. Which is really neat. But let's say I change my mind and I don't want to use a stereo frequency shifter. Instead, I want to use a mono ring modulator. Well, then I can just change up my patch without really going through the hassle of having to track down where all the cables went. And you can just focus on, well, trying to figure out what effect or processor to use. So I think this sounds really nice, but let's try out how the VCA behaves. For this, I'm just going to use a looping envelope. You can see it on the scope, and I'll just connect this envelope to one of the VCA inputs, well, the VCA for the left channel. But once again, you can hear how this VCA takes over control of left and right signals. Now if you just patch an envelope to the right, to the VCA for the right signal, you will hear that the left one just keeps droning and it's only the right one that's getting attenuated. And this is the case for every feature on Tutto Sempre. The normalizations are actually they're going from the right to the left, which means that whatever you patch into the left inputs will take over control of the right inputs, but it's not the other way around. So say I want to actually control the right side with a different envelope. Well, I can do so by just patching a different one to that CV input here. Like I said, this is a really basic patch, just VCO through a filter. Everything else is happening after the connection to the mixer. But we were able to make some creative choices without ever having to unplug the signal from the mixer. Now, maybe I just want to go back to using the stereo frequency shifter. Well, and this is just really easy and straightforward. Now, the way these patchbay outputs are set up is that they don't react to volume changes. They also don't react to muting the signal, which means that you can use these as unity gain outputs well, to send to different processors, maybe even to an interface, without having to worry that you accidentally mute them or that you accidentally knock the level out of the position, which probably will not happen because these knobs, there's a nice torque to them and they feel really, really great, by the way. Now these separate outputs here, they do follow the level of this volume knob. They also get muted when you mute the signal. You can use these as well to, well, send to other effects. Well, the sky is the limit, really. But let's just, for the sake of it, connect top output here to a delay. Let's connect the output, the mono output of that delay to the third channel input. And the reason I'm doing this is simply because I want to show you that we will lose the delayed signal once I start turning down the level of this channel, because these outputs follow the volume. They are post fader, in this case post volume knob. So even though this channel where the delay is sent to is not muted, the volume knob is completely to the right. It's not receiving anything simply because this output which is going to the delay, is well, attenuated by the volume knob. And also by the silent or clickless mute. Sending anything to either the auxiliary inputs or the headphone inputs will mix the signal at unity gain with everything else that's going on Tutto Sempre. But, well, you probably saw it already. For these two bottom stereo inputs, which are connected to a headphone driver, it depends on the setting of this push button here. When this knob is ejected, or well, not pushed down, the signal that we connect to these inputs, and again these are normalized, the signal is just mixed in at unity gain in the master bus. But when we press this button down, the signal is muted from the master bus, but we can listen to it on headphones. And I'm going to try to bring this headphone that I just connected here to this headphone output. I'll try to bring this closer to my microphone, and I hope that you can hear it. Let's mute this here. So everything on the main part here of the mixer is muted, but we can hear the VCO through this headphone output. So if I now depress this button, the signal is, well, it's still coming out of the headphone output, but it's also routed to the master bus. And additionally, everything else that's going on in the mixer is also routed through to this stereo headphone output. Which is hard to demonstrate, but maybe I can by just disconnecting. All of this is really great once you start using the mixer. So I made a few patch examples to show you a bit how I explored this mixer and what nice things I came up with. Now, before going into those, I want to thank Federico for sending me this nice module, well, and a few other modules. I really enjoy this mixer. The build quality is great. These knobs feel, well, awesome. There's no wiggle to them at all. This master volume knob is very nice as well. I haven't told you what it does, but well, it's pretty apparent what it does. It controls the master volume. And well, something that I didn't mention either is just how very clean this mixer is. Usually I like Eurorack mixers to be either really clean or I want them with a nice character, but I actually prefer them to be clean. And Tutto Sempre is, well, extremely clean. Federico told me that he spent a great deal of time and effort designing this mixer to have the cleanest, best signal path that he could actually make. And well, I think it's safe to say that he succeeded in this goal. I made a few patch examples. I'm not talking in those patch examples, there's just some on-screen information. I tried to use different features of Tutto Sempre in, well, clever ways to show off the capabilities. And I also tried to edit the video a little bit. Well, I just tried to make it a nice video to look at. So thank you very much for watching through at least to this point of the video. I hope you stick around for the patch examples, and well, I also hope you learned something. See you next time. Bye.